This case will probably never be solved. Elizabeth Short, known after her death as the Black Dahlia, was discovered gruesomely murdered on the sidewalk right out in the open in Los Angeles in 1947. There is no doubt that she was meant to be found. What began that day, 78 years ago next month, would be a seemingly never ending mystery. She would be 100 years old now, but back then she was a 22-year-old aspiring actress who was last seen alive at the Biltmore Hotel. If we assume that whoever killed her was at least 20 years old, that person would be 98 now, at least. When she was found, there were a number of disturbing finds. She had been cut in half in a method called hemicorporectomy. She'd been bathed and exsanguinated or drained of blood. Her face was mutilated to make it look like a clown's face. The cuts were very neat. It was obvious that she had been killed elsewhere and dumped there in a very public area where she was bound to be found. This was not the work of a serial killer, it was personal. The mutilation likely meant to humiliate a woman who was very beautiful in life. She had been posed in a way such that the woman who found her at first believed she was a mannequin. There were other mutilations as well, and we don't need to go into them any further here. It's absolutely fascinating for sleuths, though, to try to piece together the profile of the person who would have done all of those things, to try to capture something that's difficult or uncapturable. The press told a lot of lies about Elizabeth. That may have helped muddy the water in her case. She was not a sex worker, and she was not as highly sexualized as the media made her out to be. There have been no end of suspects and leads for the FBI to examine. When DNA came along, they had samples, but they have never been able to match those samples to anyone. They even had potentially fingerprints that were found on an anonymous letter that was sent to authorities, and it may have been written by the killer, but the prints haven't matched anyone either. They had confessions too, more than one, all false. In 2003, a retired LAPD detective named Steve Hodel wrote a book detailing why he believed his father was the killer. His father was gynecologist George Hodel, who died in 1999. Hodel and Elizabeth dated before she was killed. The son and many others believed that Elizabeth was killed at Hodel's estate in Los Feliz, which sold in 2018 for $5 million. His suspicion around his father began after his father's death, when he was looking through the elder Hodel's belongings. His father would have been taught hemicorporectomy at medical school back in the 30s. The handwriting on the letters sent to the press and police from someone calling themselves the Black Dahlia Avenger looked a lot like his father's handwriting. Hodel was even near the top of LAPD's list of suspects at the time. No one's yet been able to debunk his theory. A woman named Janice Knowlton also believed that her father was the killer and wrote a book detailing her theory. After she died, her sister would say that the book contained, well, to put it nicely, little if any truth. Back to Steve's story for a minute, though. He found receipts for contracting work done at the Hodel estate. One of those showed a purchase for 10 5-pound bags of concrete. There were concrete bags found near Elizabeth that police believe were used to carry her to the location where she was found. The receipts show the same size bags and the same brand. The witnesses are mostly dead now, all the ones interviewed by the LAPD, and apparently the LAPD is missing something else. Most of the physical evidence. Most of it has been lost from then till now. But for some transcripts from when the Hodel estate was being wiretapped, where it sounds very likely that Hodel is confessing to the murder and confident the LAPD would never prove it. Not now that his secretary was dead, anyway. Wow. Steve's story is definitely the strongest, complete with evidence, possibility for the real killer of Elizabeth Short, even if it's just a circumstantial case. A lot of homicides are resolved that are circumstantial cases. If that's not enough, Steve believes his father was a serial killer, killing women across California to Chicago and even to Manila, where Hodel once lived. He even believes his father was the Zodiac killer. His evidence here substantially weaker. Another interesting theory comes from Hugh Eatwell, British author, who concludes that Elizabeth was murdered by Leslie Duane Dillon, bellhop and one-time mortician's assistant, who was also on that suspect list. She believes he had a conspirator, Mark Hansen, who had ties to a dirty LAPD police sergeant. She points to various evidence that suggests that Hansen and Dillon killed Short to prevent her from talking about a hotel robbery scam they were all involved in. Hansen's address book ended up in a package of Elizabeth's personal belongings. This bellhop, Dillon, also sent letters to LAPD under a pseudonym, alleging other motives and people involved in the killing. Eatwell's theories are definitely interesting, and she connects the dots really well. But the case she makes out is also very circumstantial, even more so than Steve Hodel's. If you're very into this case, I recommend reading both books and the FBI files that are disclosed on their website. Hodel's book is called Black Dahlia Avenger, The True Story, and Eatwell's book is called Black Dahlia Red Rose. There are very few cases that attract as much attention so long after the fact when all of the people involved are gone. Elizabeth Short is the unsolved crime of the 20th century, or at least it's in the running. It's a more modern Borden slaying mystery. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these videos and you want to see more, please click the subscribe button and hit those notifications so that you don't miss any uploads. We appreciate you. Thanks.